Hello everyone. So, I made a roundup like a year ago, but I pretty much scrapped it. The movies I was gonna talk about were as follows: Taxi Driver, Schindler's List, Pink Floyd's The Wall, A Single Man, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, Oppenheimer, Barbie, Come and See, Blade Runner 2049, Koyaanisqatsi, Talk to Me, The Silence of the Lambs, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the new one, the new-ish one, with The Wizard of Oz, Pan's Labyrinth, The Last Voyage of the Demeter, All About Eve, RoboCop, The Intruder, Blue Beetle, The Pawnbroker, The 7-Year Itch, The Apartment, The Revenant, Gladiator, Memories of Murder, A Matter of Life and Death, and, again, Across the Spider-Verse. As what Phil Swift would say, now that's a lot of movies if I do say so. Now if you heard, Oppenheimer and Barbie were near the top of the list. That's how long ago I made this, because those films were still in theaters. Now this was at a point where I had a burnout, and I kind of gave up making videos for a while. I can tell why though. Like, just looking at all the movies I wanted to discuss in one video, it made me want to crawl out of my brain. I really think it's because I just wanted to share my thoughts and ideas like a diary almost, but it just took a lot of time to make these videos. I've been experimenting with like one cut, very little editing videos, and talking about those would work in that setting, but I don't know if I want to do it for like movie reviews. I really don't know, to be honest. There has been a few movies that I feel interested in talking about briefly again. So without further ado, here's the true Roundup 6 video. The first film I'm talking about today is Seven Samurai by the classic master director Akira Kurosawa. This film some consider his magnum opus. It's 3.5 hours long with outstanding characters and character arcs. The pacing is long, but necessary for the themes of the film. The best way to describe this film is about war of attrition. It's about a slow battle that is well executed. There are some greatly paced editing choices that bring out a lot of tension in the scene. Some people might be turned off by the length and runtime of the film, but it's so important. The idea of these characters being tired, being done with this battle, it's very important. By the end, it's bittersweet and sad, and I wouldn't want it any other way. For me personally, I was lucky enough to see this in a movie theater for the 4K release. Somebody fell asleep in the movie theater too. That being said, I'm giving this an 8 out of 10. The next film I wanted to talk about is Joker 2, The Dance Dance Revolution. This film is a mess, but with only seeing it once, I really didn't hate it as much as others did. For one thing, I really do think that Joaquin Phoenix does a good job here, and it's well shot with some good camera choices and some interesting sound design. But it is a mess regardless. It's a film that's trying to be subversive and say something biting about the genre that the film lives in, as well as the first film. That, as well as it being a semi-musical also. It was an unfocused and half-cooked idea of a film. All of the musical elements become very grating as the film goes further along. It's just an annoying part of the movie that really didn't need to be there. The film tries to say too much and ends up not saying much of anything that's worth attention. Harley Quinn's character fits well in this universe. It's just the ideas and how the film presents them that are ruined. It's a film that sours the more I think about it, and to be honest, I'm giving this a 4 out of 10. Next up is Smile 2. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I hate the first one for a few reasons. However, I will say that this film is an improvement for me personally. That being said, it really isn't that hard to improve on the first one. This is a horror film that relies on the character going crazy, and that leads to a lot of bullshit scenes filled with some jump scares. Now, in my mind, it's all about how rewarding the film feels to me, and there were genuinely some scenes that left me feeling engaged. For one, the production was better and more interesting than the first one. I will say that the tone is more realized in this film. What I hate about the first film is how confused the film felt over tone. It was an absolute mess in that field. For this film, it felt more consistent. One scene in particular that really stuck with me being the car scene with the camera moving around. I will say the ending is terrible for this film, because all the plot points it sets up becomes absolutely pointless, all for the sake of a generic but pretty fun ending. I really do feel like I enjoyed this film so much because the first time I watched it was in a Dolby Cinema. I don't go to Dolby Cinemas often, so I was just having a fun time. If you're not familiar with Dolby Cinema, it's just like louder, it looks better I guess, the blacks are darker, and it's like the brights are brighter I guess. So I just kind of enjoyed myself. I feel like the second time or third time I watch this film, if I do watch it that many times, it's going to sour on me more and more. But that being said, I'm giving this right now a 5 out of 10. I discussed the anecdote for Dolby Cinema because I want to stress the idea of subjectivity. While I try my hardest to be consistent with my criticisms, my personal emotional experience does come first over everything. Anyways, moving on. The next film is Sean Baker's Palme d'Or winning film, Anora. This was a movie that I was very excited to see since the beginning of 2024, and I'm glad I was able to watch this in a semi-full crowd. This film is about a stripper named Anora that finds a pretty wealthy and affluent client, and then a really interesting and fun set of events follows. I really loved this film, even though it was kind of headache-inducing. This is really funny with great comedic timing from the actors. Some actors that I expected to be more one-note and small become extremely complex and important. I love the characters and the events that they go through. I'm not fully familiar with Sean Baker's films, but I really loved how much care he put into the characters and telling their stories in a correct and entertaining way. This film also has one of my favorite endings of the year as well. It's very emotional, heartbreaking, and bold, and the ending is a really strong way to conclude the movie. I will be watching this film again, and so far I'm giving this a strong 8 out of 10. The next film is Pieces of a Woman from 2020. Before my burnout, I was making a best of the year of 2020 list for my channel. But, like most things I try to do for the channel, it got way too ambitious, it got way too big, and it fell through. However, this film was really high up there for the rewatch list, and I am confident with that. This film is about a home pregnancy that goes wrong and the fallout of that. This is an emotional powerhouse of a film that is extremely frustrating due to its characters. Vanessa Kirby does a career best performance here, and it's my personal favorite from her as the mother in this film. What she has to go through and still find peace through it all is just so beautiful. The ending is so emotional and beautiful with strong motifs set through the film. I thoroughly enjoyed this and I'm giving this an 8 out of 10. The next film I watched was Hundreds of Beavers. This film was a slapstick cartoon-like comedy about a man trying to survive in the wilderness in a very fun and wacky way. The comedy in this film is so creative and just doesn't stop until the very end of the film. It's a goofy and fun ride that I thought was really funny. I will say it did feel really repetitive through the film, and some elements did get a little tiring. However, I did enjoy my time with this, and I could watch this again in the future. I'm giving this a light 8 out of 10. Next up is Gladiator 2. This sucked. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend it didn't. It sucked. From the very beginning, this is a by-the-books slop. The film says nothing new and it's just so uninteresting. I also watched this in a Dolby Cinema and the magic of the movies was not there to save this film. The story is slop, the way it looks is phony and nothing about the dialogue is interesting. It's one of those films where the dialogue is empty yet they just say so much. I was extremely annoyed with my experience and this film is slop. It sucks. Anyways, it's a film that I'm going to forget about over time, and it really solidifies Ridley Scott to me as a mediocre director. That being said, I'm giving this film a 3 out of 10. The next film I'm going to talk about is going to piss a few people off, Wicked. This is the origin story of the Wicked Witch from The Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz is a gorgeous piece of Technicolor that I completely adore. That being said, this film right here feels kind of colorless, or like faded color. I was very disappointed with how the film looks. The way it's shot was clumsy and it felt unplanned. That's really what I have a problem with the most with this film is its direction and camera work. If this film was given to a more competent set of creatives, then this would really excel, I feel. But it's just by the numbers and generic as hell. There were some fun scenes here and there, but most of the musical sequence felt poorly choreographed, and that led to nothing really magical in my opinion. I was quite disappointed with how this film came together, but I am at the very least going to watch part 2. I'm giving this a 4 out of 10. Hello, I come back from my second viewing, and to be truthful, the elements that I was most upset about didn't really affect my watch the second time as much as it did the first. Everything I said I still believe, but I did really enjoy my time with it the second time. For one, the pacing felt quicker and more realized. There's a good amount of information that is given throughout the film to keep me engaged. Also, I really enjoyed the musical sequences in the library as well as the ending being very powerful. I feel pretty confident bumping up my score by 1, so I'm giving this a 5 out of 10. And the last film I'm going to talk about today is Nosferatu by the director Robert Eggers. Nosferatu is an important piece of media for film history, being one of the first gothic horror films of the 1920s. This is a retelling of that story in an exceptionally well-made way. Robert Eggers is a masterful director that never disappoints in how he crafts a film. There are some mesmerizing moments in this film that left me speechless. I believe I said this in my Northman review, but the way Eggers directs background characters and movement is so satisfying and just so exceptional. This film at times times felt very dreamlike. One scene in particular with a carriage felt so hypnotic and enchanting, like we, the audience, were being sucked towards the castle against our will. I loved Count Orlok in this film. The sound design of his voice, as well as the incredible performance from Bill Skarsgård, made him feel so monstrous and kinda terrifying. Also, I have to give praise to Lily Rose Depp for her explosive yet reserved performance. I really loved how tragic this film felt and looked. You can tell the creatives and the director knew what they wanted and they were just locked in. The acting has been really growing on me also. I truly love the stage play-like element to the acting, and every character does a phenomenal job. Pretty much every aspect of the film gets better for me the more I think about it. The more I think about this film, the more I love it. The ending is gross, beautiful, and sad, and I cannot wait to rewatch this. I did initially give this film a 7 out of 10, but the more I really connect with this, I'm really feeling a decent 8 out of 10 for this. And that is all for this rundown of films. I didn't think that was too much. The initial list was 28 films, and I ended up talking about only 9, so there you go. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll be seeing you all later. Bye-bye!